my parents never had an easy relationship, and I saw a lot of things where as a child I was like, okay, wow, I'm not gonna end up doing that. I'm gonna try and go into a whole different direction. And maybe that's how it started. In my teen years, it was also kind of, rebellion, and I was the rebel of the family who like doesn't want to wear traditional Indian clothes and just doesn't want to fit into this thing. And I feel like over the years, now that I'm older, it has gotten to a point where I just accept myself as whoever I am, and I've kind of never apologized for it. It was always, no, I know what I want, and maybe it came from that thing where at an early age I saw what I don't want to become, and that's kind of given me the strength to fight for who I want to be.
Welcome to We Are Childfree, a podcast about child-free women and the lives we lead. I'm your host, Zoe, and each episode I'll speak with another incredible woman about her decision not to have children and what it's meant for her life. That badass you heard up top is Rubi Chauhan, who calls herself the most uncommon Indian you will ever encounter. Rubi was born to Indian parents in a small village in Austria, and while her schoolmates were settling down, she was moving to Vienna to create the kind of life she wants to live. Rubi values her freedom more than anything and doesn't want children or a relationship holding her back. She won't even commit to a hair colour for too long. At just 22 years old, Rubi knows what she wants in a way that I could only have dreamt of at her age. She won't compromise for anyone, not friends or family or society at large, and she was an absolute inspiration to speak to. Make way for Gen Z. Here's my conversation with Rubi.
I don't think I can actually say that like at some point that there was a moment where I was like, okay, now I definitely know I don't want kids. It's just always been like, I remember as a kid when, kids play these games where one is the mom, one is the dad, and they're the kids, and you play, and I was always the one who was like, no, but I'm a grown woman, but I don't have kids. So I and I was always in these games, I was always like, no, I'm like a singer or a musician or I don't know, something like that, some crap I wanted to do as a child. But I was always like, I'm a child-free person because I don't think I want to have kids. So it was always kind of my I never questioned it, actually.
So, I mean, you're quite young as well, right?
Yeah, I'm 22.
It's amazing that at such a young age that you had that, such a strong opinion and were able to voice it like that. I think that's incredible. How did people around you react?
Well, when I was a kid, obviously people didn't take it seriously because they thought it's just some child talking. But as I grew older, I'm an aunt of 4. So,
Oh, wow. Okay.
and I love those kids. But after like my siblings had kids, that's when the conversation kind of started, because I sometimes would say stuff like, wow, I'm glad that I'm not someone who wants kids, whenever there was a difficulty. And that's when it started with my parents, actually, and most of them, my mom was the one who would always be like, oh, don't say stuff like that. I do want grandkids from you too. And I want to say on a side note, I have 5 other siblings, so we're 6 kids. I don't like,
wow.
They would still have a lot of grandkids, even if one of their child doesn't want to have some. So yeah, that's how it kind of started. That the older I got, people would always be like, at like age 17, 18, people would be like, you're way too young, you'll get there, just give yourself some time.
Okay.
And now I feel like people are kind of getting worried, because where I'm originally from in Austria, it's a very small village. So people are, do the typical thing that society tells you to do. They get married very young. I mean, half of the people I went to school with are married. So
Oh, wow.
they get
Okay.
married and they have kids, and nobody questions it because it's the thing you just do. So now I feel like it's getting to the point where people are like, oh, you're not married, you don't have kids, what are you doing?
Well, living your life,
Yes.
So, I mean, your parents they really wanted you to have kids, even though they already have grandkids.
Yes.
So the pressure was on.
Yes. They still, I mean, they do say that I should take my time, and they don't expect me to have children like in the next year or something. But they do think that it would be horrible if I didn't have kids at all.
Okay. They're Indian, is that right?
Yes.
And you think obviously that the culture in India is that you have kids. There is no question, I'm assuming.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like in Austria people are more like thought to, think about these decisions. Like one of my sister got married last year, and she has always wanted kids, but like they are planning, but they're not like, let's just do it because that's what you do.
Right.
They're like thinking, okay, but she has her studies to finish and stuff like that. But with Indian people, as soon as they get married, they have like 4 or 5 kids, and it's just something you do. You don't think about that.
Mm.
So I do believe it's a bit of that my parents are more worried about me not having kids because it's what they were taught. Indians also have this concept in their head that you're supposed to have kids just so you have someone who takes care of you when you're old.
Ah, okay.
So they're always like, but are you not worried that you'll be lonely when you're old, or that you won't have someone to look after you, stuff like that.
Okay, because I guess, yeah, in India where you have large families, that is happening. You have, your parents and everyone lives together, I'm guessing, and you're looking after elderly relatives
Yes.
really close to home. Okay. So I mean, when did your parents move to Austria?
They were pretty young. My dad was about 18 or 19,
Okay.
and my mom was, I think, 20 or 21, something like that.
Right. And why did they do the move?
My dad moved here because he actually wanted to live in Germany, but that didn't work out. So he moved to
Ah, okay.
Austria. He just wanted a better chance at life. They were very poor in India, and he wouldn't have gotten the education he wanted. So he moved to
Yeah.
Austria. And my mom was actually, her cousin lived here. And
Right.
now it's gonna get complicated. Her cousin was married to my father's brother, and he was
Okay.
living here in Austria. And my mom came to visit her, then met my dad, and decided to stay here.
Wow, okay. So they met in Austria,
Yeah.
and how and when did they get married then? How old were they?
Oh, they actually got married after my little sister was born. So
Okay.
they were at least like 30. My dad is 10 years older, so he was 40. They got
Right,
married pretty
okay.
late for an Indian couple.
Okay, okay. So I mean it's interesting when people come over from another country and culture, and obviously they've moved to Austria, and it must be quite difficult to try and you have to combine but different cultures together, and especially for their children, I guess they want you to follow in their footsteps because that's what they grow up with themselves, like that's what they knew and were told. So it must be quite difficult, I guess, to to kind of try and jump into another way of living. And how flexible do you go with that?
I mean, yeah, it was very difficult, and it still is, especially when I was a teenager. Of course, there were a lot of discussions and a lot of
Okay.
fights because whatever they said I wasn't okay with, and vice versa. Um, my dad was actually, before he married my mom, he was married to an Austrian, and he also has like 2 kids with her, my half sister and half brother. So he was kind of more open already. Um, and now it's like they do try to understand us. Sometimes there are things where they're just like, okay, we can't convince our kids otherwise, so we're just gonna have to live with it. And with
Right.
some topics, of course, we still have discussions, and it's difficult. I'm actually, I always say that I'm the most uncommon Indian that you will ever encounter. Because
Okay.
yeah, I mean, you don't see me now, but I have green hair. I have my sides shaved off. I have tattoos. So every time I tell people that my parents are Indian, they don't believe me. Um,
Oh, that's amazing. Well, you
Yeah.
sound like a badass, which I love. So what about then your siblings? I mean, were they supportive with your decision not to have kids?
They are, except for one sister who already has 2 kids. I actually
Okay.
didn't know that I thought she knew how serious I was about this whole child. I don't want kids. I don't want to have kids thing. Until
Yeah.
recently, I had a talk with her, and we kind of came to discussing relationships. I'm not a like I don't like commitments at all, which is why I don't do
Mm.
relationships either. Um, so like that's how the conversation started, and I was like, yeah, I don't want kids either. So and she looked at me and she was like, yeah, you always say that. I know you don't mean it. And then I was like, no, I do mean it. Like I actually mean it. I don't want kids. Like I think the most horrible thing that could happen to me is if I would get pregnant unintentionally. Like I can't imagine a more worse scenario. And she was actually kind of disappointed, and she started defending her decision and started to tell me how she loves her kids and stuff like that. So I don't know, it kind of
Yeah.
got to her.
Yeah, it's always interesting that reaction that someone else has when it's your decision, it's your
Yeah,
body, it's your life, and why can't she understand that this is something so personal to each person that she absolutely wanted kids, had it, maybe it thinks it's the best thing in the world, and why do you think it's so difficult for other people to understand that there are women who don't have that feeling of wanting that in their life, and actually it makes them want to run a mile, the thought of it.
yeah. I feel like, I mean, it's starting to change slightly, but I feel like a lot of people have this picture in their head that women are just supposed to have kids. That's just what they're supposed to do.
Mm,
And whenever somebody tells them, well, I don't want that, it's like, oh, like you have an option. I actually feel like a lot of women, for the most, don't know that that they have an option. I feel like
yeah,
I actually know a lot of women who have kids who I feel like if you would have asked them and told them, "Hey, but you don't have to have kids," maybe they would have ended, in a different way and maybe wouldn't have had kids.
yeah,
So I feel like
absolutely.
that's and there are a lot of people who just don't think. That sounds very like I'm praising myself and telling everybody that they're stupid, but I do feel like a lot of people just don't think. There's a lot
Yeah,
of people who just never question society. I'm someone who questions society too much. Um, but I feel like there are people who just, they just never think. They're just, okay, this is
mm.
the way to go. This is what you do in life. You get married, you have kids, you build a house, and then you die, and that's it. But there are more ways to be happy.
The fact that people don't think about this decision, which I would argue this is one of the most important decisions of anyone's life.
Yeah.
It does kind of boggle the mind a little bit when you kind of see it happening in front of you. People pop out children, and there was no question that it was going to happen, even if they maybe aren't in a stable relationship, aren't in a stable career, haven't worked out what they're doing, with their life yet. They'll still go along this path of you buy the house or you have the kid and you get married. And I guess, yeah, maybe women like us, they kind of throw a spanner in the works in their, like, their what they've been taught from a very young age, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely. It's it's kind of saddening, honestly, when I think about it, because I feel like there are so many things a woman can do that can make you happy. So I think it's kind of sad that people or women think that having kids is the one thing that will make them happy. I
Mm,
had a coworker a few years ago who was, I think, like 35 or something, and she was happy, she was doing her thing. And but every time we would talk, like have a deep talk or something, she would tell me, well, she thinks she hasn't accomplished anything in her life because she's 35 and she doesn't have kids.
wow.
And she kept telling me that she's not even sure she wants kids, but she just feels like it's weird that she doesn't have them by now.
I mean, and that's the thing. I do feel like there's this, this is put out into the world that women are not fulfilled unless they they have a child because that's their one role in this world is to have a baby. And I just think that's absolute bollocks. I mean, we are, here to live our life in whatever way that may be. And I guess we're trying to shake everything up and say, actually, no, women aren't just here for one thing. I mean, have you had then much pushback from, friends, or do you have like a network of other child-free women that you can kind of talk with?
Mm, I mean, my closest friends are very like open-minded people. So even though some of them do want kids, they respect my decision of not wanting kids. But I've actually had like a few friends where I was like very shocked when I talked about this thing to them, that they had this controversial thinking and that they didn't actually approve with what I was saying. And it was a lot of times with people who I did not expect that from. So I remember one friend who knew my coworker who like lives alone. She's I think almost 40. She lives alone. She doesn't have a life partner, and she doesn't have kids. And that friend would always be like, but like she doesn't have a life, right? She like what would we do? Like she's 40 and she doesn't have kids and she doesn't have like a husband or something. So that must be a very
Oh,
sad
wow.
life. And I was so shocked when she said that, because like I didn't expect that. So it that did happen a few times, that I talked to friends and they would say stuff like that, and I was like, oh my god, I didn't know that's how you thought about these things. So I do have to say, I always felt like I respect other people's opinions, so obviously they will respect mine, but that's not always the case.
No, sadly not. No. Yeah, that is a weird kind of perspective that people have, that if you don't have kids or you don't have a husband or a partner, like somehow you are just going to live this lonely, sad life. And I mean, that's one of the things that people throw out, like, oh, when you're older, you're going to be alone. And it's like, why can't we accept that actually we can create the life that we want to live, and it doesn't need to have children or even a partner in there. We can lead a fulfilling life and fill it with other things other than, you know, childbearing and
Yeah.
looking after another person. Going back to when we were talking about, people not really thinking maybe about this decision as much as, say, perhaps you or I would. I mean, in a place like India where, people obviously have so many children per family. This is like a 3, 4, 5 per family rather than even just a one child. You know, I mean, I worry about overpopulation. Do you
Oh yeah.
ever kind of think of, yeah, you think of that as well?
Yeah, I'm a very I like I'm vegan, and I try to cut back like plastic and stuff like that. So I do look out for the environment as much as I can.
Yeah.
And I do think that's a huge point. Like we are overpopulated, so why would I, like want to be part of that problem and create even more human beings in such like the world is at such a weird stage. I wouldn't want to put anyone through this. And like what I used to say was, when people ask me, but what if you want kids someday and you can't have them because you're too old, or you can't have them because you don't have a partner or something like that, I always think to myself, in case that ever happens, because never say never. I mean, I'm pretty sure it won't, but
Yeah.
in case that does, I would be more than happy to adopt a child and give someone a home who doesn't have a home, rather than, put another living being here.
Yeah, it feels like that option of adoption is never really, I don't know, thought of. I mean, people, I guess the easiest option is to have your own child. It's just, wham bam, thank you, mom, and then you have a baby. And that's what people kind of go for, the easy option. Because I mean, I know I have some family members who've adopted, and it's a long, difficult process. And there are people that are rejected as possible parents for really dumb things and dumb reasons. And so it's not perfect. I totally get that adoption is not perfect, but maybe we should try and look at pushing that as a real viable option for people if they desperately want children. Why aren't we talking about more options like adoption?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't like I've witnessed my sister's two pregnancies, and I wouldn't say that's easy, because I
No.
mean, I was even in there when my nephew was born. So, and I saw things that
Oh,
where I
wow.
was like, maybe that was one of the moments where I was like, yeah, I'm thankful I'm someone who doesn't want to have her own kids. But like, like you put yourself through a lot when you have a kid. Like I know stories of women who, I don't know, like still have issues with, I don't know if I can say the word, but like down there,
Yeah.
and
Yes,
um,
yes.
so, and like we have mental problems, and I don't know, have maybe gone through a trauma during labor and stuff like that. So I
Mm,
feel like women don't really think like it's not just okay, I'm just gonna have a kid, but like you go through a lot and it never ends. So I feel like it's okay, now I'm gonna sound I'm gonna sound ignorant again, but like every stupid person on this planet can have kids. Like nobody asks them or nobody goes like, "Hey, are you sure you want to do this? Do you have like financial resources and stuff like that?" But when it comes to people adopting, I mean, that's a more conscious decision, isn't it? Because nobody
yes,
would go through that process if they didn't actually want kids.
yes,
So I think that's also a thing where it should be a lot easier to adopt. I'm not
yeah,
saying, that they should just give away kids, but it should be easier so that more people see that as an option.
absolutely, absolutely. What about people's reaction to you obviously can be quite dismissive because you are relatively young. How is it when you have to deal with like health professionals? Do they also have similar reactions to that?
It depends where I'm right now. For example, when I'm in Vienna, it's, the capital of Austria, it's a huge city. People are more open-minded there. Usually I don't have like to discuss this, but most of the time, especially in my hometown, it's people invite themselves to have a discussion and to make me like it makes me feel like I have to um goodness, now I forgot the word, to like defend myself. That's what I was going to say.
Yes.
To defend myself, and but I do feel like still most of the people tell me that I'm too young to know,
Wow.
which is weird because I know a lot of people who are younger than me and already have kids. So if they can make the decision that they want kids, I can definitely make the decision that I don't want them. So
Absolutely. Yeah, exactly. It's like why are women so sure in their decision to have them, but if we don't want them, it's like where we can't be believed.
yeah, and what I don't get is a lot of times like I tell them my reasons, and I'm like, don't want commitments. I can't stick to one hair color. How do you expect me to stick to a human being and to that responsibility? So
Yes, that is very true.
and I like my freedom. I want to be free. I want to be able to, if I mean, it's the coronavirus going around now, but I want to be someone who, if I'm like, hey, I'm moving to London tomorrow, then I can do that because there's nothing holding me back and I'm free to
Yeah.
go. So every time I tell people these things, or money is another thing where I'm like, you have a more money if you don't have kids. People
Yes.
always tell me that I'm selfish and narcissistic, but like then they go on and say, I do want to have kids, but because I need someone to take care of me when I'm old. Like, isn't that selfish?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, lots of these things that people say to us, it's like they don't even think about it. It's like they've heard them, or they've read them somewhere, and then they're repeating it
Oh
like a
yeah.
parrot, like without even thinking about their own life and how dumb some of the things they're saying. Like the selfish thing, I also don't understand because we make these decisions in our life and yes, sometimes they are selfish, and that is not a bad thing, I don't think
No.
either. What do you say back to someone when they say you're being selfish by not having children?
Well, most of the time I tell them, or I ask them what there is bad about being selfish. Because I mean,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's a selfish decision to, not want kids, because it's not like they're already here. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
that then I would be neglecting someone, and that would be selfish. But like, my kids don't exist, so I don't feel like that's being selfish. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
So, most of the time I try to explain. I'm someone who can't, just be like, okay, never mind. I dive into the discussion, and yeah, well, most of the time ask them what they think is selfish about my decision.
Yeah. Yeah. So try and kind of push back on them to make them explain their weird,
Yeah.
silly questions. Yes, good thinking.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, for example, like I mentioned earlier, I'm not into commitment and I don't do relationships. I've actually never been in a relationship in my life, and I don't plan on getting into one. So, because I don't want that commitment, and want to be free. And, you know, I also had like people tell me that my decision of not wanting a partner or kid is gonna make me be lonely at some point. And that's another thing, because I feel like just because you're like alone doesn't mean you're necessarily lonely. I feel like these are two different things, because I mean, I'm alone a lot of the time. I live in a huge city, especially now with the coronavirus. I live alone. I rarely meet people, and I'm fine with myself. Like, I love myself, and I like being with me. I can go months without talking to someone, and I don't have a problem with that. And I think that is important, to be able to be with yourself. Um, but I feel like that's another thing where, like I mentioned, I have a lot of siblings. So you would think my parents, have someone around all the time, but that is not true,
Mm.
because all of us are like scattered around Austria. My sister was just in Canada, so we're all over the place, and we're rarely at home with our parents. So having kids doesn't mean you will have someone around you all the time. It's a very risky reason to have kids.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, there is no guarantee having a child that that child is going to be able to look after you, that they're going to be living near enough to you. I mean, we can't predict the future. So it's really weird for people to kind of throw that out there and, tell you that's a reason to have a child, which I couldn't think of a worse reason to have a child for, someone to look after me when I'm older. I want to enjoy my life now, right
Yeah.
now. And for me, if that means not having children in my life, then I want to enjoy that life. I don't want to force something on myself that does not fit into who I am or what I want to do with my life. And people just, yeah, I think they just want to make you conform.
It's also very unfair, I feel like, to have this expectation of someone who you don't know, like, how they're gonna turn out to be. Like, if you
Yeah.
have a child, you don't know what they want in the future, and maybe they, I don't know, want to live 3,000 miles away from you, and they should not, feel guilty about wanting to move away and wanting to pursue their dreams or whatever makes them happy, just because you make them feel like they need to be around you. So I feel like, actually, it sounds like a very toxic thing to do.
Absolutely. I feel like we should try and encourage people to, like you said earlier, to be able to be okay with being by yourself and, living your life and on your own steam and being independent. Like all of those things I feel are really amazing characteristics. I mean, where do you think your strength in knowing who you were from such a young age, and being so sure of yourself, like that is something that's a real amazing characteristic to have at such a young age. Where do you think that's come from?
Mm, I feel like it kind of maybe started as my parents never had an easy relationship. And I saw a lot of things where as a child I was like, okay, wow, I'm not gonna end up doing that. I'm gonna try and go into a whole different direction, and maybe that's how it started. In my teen years it was also kind of, rebellion, and I was the rebel of the family who like doesn't want to wear traditional Indian clothes and just doesn't want to fit into this thing. And I feel like over the years, now that I'm older, it has gotten to a point where I just accept myself as whoever I am, and I've kind of never apologized for it. It was always, no, I know what I want, and like maybe it came from that thing where, as at an early age, I saw what I don't want to become, and that's kind of given me the strength to fight for who I want to be.
So what's something that you've done with your life that, you couldn't have done if you'd had children?
I move around a lot.
Right. So yeah, where have you traveled to?
Well, the favorite place, absolute favorite place is London.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, cool.
I love it. And
Yeah.
very sad. I was going to see Queen there this year, but that didn't happen. um,
Oh, no.
yeah, but I think that's the main thing. I move around a lot, and I mean, the longest I've lived in a place was 2 years, and I felt at the end I was suffocating. I was not happy. I was there were problems with at my workplace, and not finding a new home in a new city, stuff like that, that kept me there for longer than I wanted. But I feel like these things, like I'm a very spontaneous person, and I move around a lot. I go to concerts a lot. I have like so much going on where I probably wouldn't be able to do when I didn't have kids, like, going to concerts, festivals, randomly flying to London or stuff like that. And I don't think it would make me happy. Definitely wouldn't make me happy to, like, I made the decision to move to Vienna within a week.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So you are a very spontaneous person.
Yeah.
To me, that sounds amazing. I mean, having that kind of freedom and flexibility in your life to up sticks and go wherever you want, and like we said, without children, you have more money, so we have
Yeah.
more disposable income to spend on travel, and I mean, it's to me, it sounds like an incredible way to live. So, yeah, it's important that we hear more stories like yours, because I want women out there to hear that we aren't just living lonely, sad lives. Like, this is such a myth for child-free women. We are actually living the best, for us at least. This is the best thing and the right thing for us.
Yeah.
I mean, do you think your family will ever kind of come to terms or accept, this from you, or do you think it's so kind of ingrained with your parents that women are meant to have kids and you're meant to settle down and have a family, that it's going to be difficult for them to ever understand the way you live?
Well, since I have so many siblings, I'm hoping that all of them will have at least two kids. So that will take the pressure off of me.
Right.
I
Yeah,
always
you'd hope. Gosh.
Yeah. I mean, my brother has twins, and I always jokingly say he already has had one kid on my behalf since he had twins.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, but I mean, I feel like my mom, it still saddens her when I say stuff like she from time to time asks me, "Are you in a relationship? Why are you not?" Or, "You do want to have kids, right? You just say those things. You don't mean it." So every time I tell her, "No, mom, like I don't see myself being in a relationship, and I don't see myself having kids," she does get sad, and I don't know. I mean, of course, I don't like it, but I
Mm.
try to kind of, I don't know, like soothe her and tell her that it's okay, and try to explain to her that I'm not gonna be some lonely old cat lady just because I don't want kids. So I feel like she's probably the one who will. I mean, I do hope she will get around, but she's definitely the one who takes it the hardest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that it's so interesting because you are actually the happiest with the way your life
Oh
is.
yeah.
So for you, this is the best decision for you, and you are able to live the life that you want and have all of this amazing freedom and ability to live your life in a really interesting, cool way. And it's seen by your mum as something so different. And
Yeah.
I mean, this is you can't control any of that. This is something out of your control with her perception of your way of life and your decisions. I mean, that's on her. So you're right. All you can do is kind of go, I'm not going to change, but if you're going to think like that, okay. Because ultimately this is your life. You have
Yeah.
to live it the way you want to live it.
Yeah. And I mean, eventually, when people see that you are happy, maybe they will actually, get that you don't need kids to live a happy and fulfilling life.
Absolutely not. No,
Not every woman's priority is having kids. Just because we can have kids doesn't mean we want to.
absolutely. Here, here. So, I mean, what would you say then to any women out there who are listening who, maybe they don't have the strength that you had, to be able to say it out loud that they don't want kids? I mean, what kind of words of wisdom or advice would you give to them?
Well, I think it is like, imagine you don't want to have kids. Imagine having kids and the life you would lead. It probably won't make you happy. And I feel like that is something worth fighting for, if I'm going to phrase it this dramatically. But like, you know, there's a like having kids and them not being happy is a huge price you pay for something you didn't want in the first place. So do not do not let anybody tell you that it's not right, that your decision is not, correct or whatever. And like, nobody should be able or should be allowed to tell you, no matter, like, even if it's a life partner, if they want kids and you don't, then go find yourself someone else. There are a lot of people on this planet. So just don't make cuts for someone, because this is a compromise that it's not like a little thing, like I want to live in the city and my partner wants to live in on the countryside or something like that. It's a huge decision, which could have worse, like a lot of, how do I say that, like the outcome.
Like negative,
Yeah.
yeah, negative effects.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly. And so that's not something you compromise on, and that's not something you do just because someone else wants you to. It's your body, so it's your decision to make. And whether it's having kids or not having kids, it's your decision. And I feel like that's the most important thing, to like look out for yourself. This is also self-love to not let you pressure into doing anything you don't want to do. So it's definitely something worth standing up for and using your voice.
We Are Childfree is hosted by me, Zoe Noble, and produced by James Glazebrook. If you liked this episode, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, as this really helps other people find us. Head to wearechildfree.com to read more stories from incredible child-free women and find out how to share your story with me. Speak soon, lovelies.